OK. OK, Madame Assoum, est-ce que...
Je vous écoute.
OK. Est-ce que vous allez nous mettre en ligne maintenant?
Vous êtes déjà en ligne, du coup, vous pouvez déjà commencer.
Ah, d'accord. OK. Well, je vais commencer en français. Je m'appelle Laurier Turgeon.
I'll start in French. My name is Laurier Turgeon.
Je vais animer cette séance avec
and I'm going to moderate this session together with Mr. Robert
souhaiter la
Farrell.
bienvenue à tous les participants francophones.
I'd like to say welcome to all French-speaking
leur annoncer
participants
qu'il y a la possibilité
and let them
d'une
know that
traduction
there
simultanée.
is interpreting into English and into French.
Sur la fenêtre interprétation.
All you have to do is click on interpretation, bottom right of your screen.
Oui, ou bien ça va être sur le côté haut droit ou le côté droit en bas de votre...
On the right-hand side, bottom right-hand side of your screen, interpretation, and then choose your language.
Alors, je vais maintenant poursuivre en anglais. Mais si vous avez des questions
carry
en
on in
français,
English now, but if you
en
have any
français sans
questions you
problème.
want to ask in French, you can ask them. There is interpreting in both languages.
So I'm going to switch to English and say good afternoon to all of our English speakers as well, English speaking NGOs. We are really delighted to have you at this symposium this afternoon, which will take place in two parts. The first part of the symposium will be dedicated to the presentation of the preliminary results of the mapping project that the steering committee has undertaken under the auspices of the of UNESCO and the Living Heritage Unit. Just to give you an idea of the program this afternoon, there'll be a series of presentations. It'll be kind of a roundtable discussion. The NGOs will be presenting the results of their work. There will be 7 presentations. ICHNGO will be presenting the results of the surveys and the one-to-one interviews in their region. We will first start by a general presentation that will be done by my colleague Kaloyan Nikolov of the online survey. And then we will go into presentations of the the results from the different regional one-to-one interviews. And those will be presented by the different people on the steering committee. Then we will, once that is over, it should take about an hour, we'll go into breakout rooms. Each region will have a breakout room and they will be numbered 1 to 7. So if you're in region 1, if your NGO is in region 1, then you go into the breakout room of region 1. If it's in region 2, you'll go into the breakout room of region 2, and etc. And the international NGOs will be in region 7. So we'll have about a half an hour so that you can discuss amongst yourselves these results, make suggestions to the steering committee. We would be happy to have those the results of those discussions, because as you know, we're not able to interview all of the NGOs. We only could interview 65 out of 193. So we're we're looking forward to hearing the results of your discussions. We will ask each regional group to nominate a rapporteur, reporter, to give a 5 to 7 minute summary of the results of the discussion. So we'll come back, we'll go into breakout rooms, we'll come back in a plenary session from 2:30 to 3 o'clock approximately. And then we'll have the second part of the symposium will be dedicated to presentations on the theme of the future directions for ICH. And that will be chaired by Reem Sakir and Bert Sekou Bert. So I would like to ask everyone to be respectful of time because we are very tight on time, and we will have to leave at 4 sharp because the interpretation services and the technical services offered to us by the Living Heritage Unit will not be able to go beyond 4 o'clock. I would like to take this opportunity also to kindly thank the Living Heritage Unit for their technical support, and also for translation. So now I believe we can go to Kaloyan's presentation, right? Kaloyan. So I'll come off here and give you the screen, okay?
Hello, everybody. Do you hear me? Is everything okay with the microphone?
Yes. Yes,
Thank
we can
you.
hear you.
You can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. First I will be, oh, it's not moving. First I will tell about a little bit about the distribution of the NGOs in a convention. You can see on the graphics, there is states in a convention on a green, light green for every region. The dark green, the dark blue, sorry. This is accredited NGOs by the region, and the green.
Sorry, Kalayan. Sorry, I think we don't see the change slide. We only see the first slide still.
Now you can see this. Is changing something?
No, we can't. We don't see the. We're still on the same slide. Okay. Just wait. Just wait.
Please
I think.
move away shared application.
Also, Kaloyan, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it possible to put it on slideshow?
Yeah.
So the slides are bigger?
Yes, I put it in a slide, but
oh, it's not showing in slideshow.
Okay.
Right.
Now it's on slide. It's changing.
Not for me, but maybe for others.
No. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I will
Try
share
again.
again. Now it's on a full screen.
Okay. Now it's good.
Okay.
And try changing the slide. Oh, okay. Good. Good.
Okay.
Fine.
It's the first slide. I said that the blue, light blue. This is states in a convention. The dark blue. This is NGOs by regions that is accredited, and the green is states that they didn't have NGOs. You can see the distribution, and now with the numbers, and in these numbers we can see that there is around 20 NGOs that have from Canada, UK, USA, and Australia, that is and Curacao, that is not signed the convention. All is in a 19 is group 1, and 1 is in a group 3. You can see now the distribution for the new suggested NGOs for the 22 GA. The distribution is almost same, and on the right we can see the numbers of suggested for determination NGOs, and in the end, if everything is like for suggestion, we can see that the distribution is same like last years. We have increased in electoral group 1 and big increase in electoral group 3, Latin America, almost 30%. And now we can see some interesting facts from the survey that we made. On the graphics, you can see that how many responses we have from all NGOs, accredited NGOs, is distributed by the electoral groups. On the first line, you can see accredited NGOs by the regions. On the second line down, you can see the numbers of responses. In the end, there is a put international NGOs. There is 9 responses, but the numbers of the international NGOs are in the group 1, I think, and group 4. There is international NGOs. I didn't divide them by the numbers. By the survey, this is we can see the distribution of domains of all accredited NGOs. We can see here that by the domains, it's one oral tradition and expression. We can see that the increased number of the NGOs that is working on narrative and storytelling, and the biggest is the song, is working in a song. All domains was divided by subdomains, and all subdomains have a three numbers of that all NGOs can say. That it's no activity, some activity, and principal area of activities of the NGOs. On performing arts, we can see that the traditional music and songs is the most domain that is using in work of NGOs. You can see the social practice and rituals and festive events. This is, I think, is the most interesting domain of the NGOs. Except the principle of activity, there is some activities. Almost all NGOs are in there. We can see that the knowledge and practice of concerning nature and universe, it's not too much interesting of the NGOs. And traditional craftsmanship is, of course, handcraft, and folk arts is the biggest number of the interesting and experience of the NGOs. Next question was safeguarding specialization of the of an expertise, where the accredited NGOs have and dominant expertise is inventorying and documentation, about 54%. Capacity building for safeguarding is the next. Non-formal education program, in particular for the young people, it's on the 3, and non-formal education and transmission for practitioners teaching in ICH is number 4. It's next question that we have in a survey. It is thematics of safeguarding which are active the NGOs, and we can see here that young activities and young participation is the most using by the NGOs. Of course, includes the social development, sustainable communities, and tourism is the thematics that NGOs are active. Next question. Sorry. Next question is participation in reporting and nomination of different programs and regional and global and networking. The dominant involving there is sharing information of documentation with other NGOs. It's 64%. 77%, 75% it's attending in the ICH NGO forum meetings. Participation in the regional and cooperative activities, of course, and development of networking of NGOs, involved many of NGOs. Innovative methodological approaches. We have more than 55% of rising answers and of safeguarding, inventorying, capacity building, sustainable tourism, and inclusive social development. We made 65 interview one-to-one interviews, and you can see the distribution of how many is in the first line. There's the responses by the survey, and the second line, this is numbers divided by the regions, but in interview one by one. We can see that there was a lot of work that we made, and now you can see it as a working in Eastern Europe region number 2. There is information about the distribution in Eastern Europe. There is 24 states, 14 states with accredited NGOs, 10 states without accredited NGOs, and accredited NGOs, the number is 20. The interviews you can see by the responses. This is a graphic visualization of the numbers, and this is NGOs by names that answer of the survey, and this is the interviews that I made with the NGOs. It's from Poland, Slovakia, Ukraine, Latvia, Georgia, Croatia, and Bulgaria. Capacity of NGOs, we can see some of the analytics. It's evolving. 6 of them is involving in a nomination. In evaluation body is 3 was in a years in the back, and inventory and documentation have capacity for this. 6 from the list. Elements in the list have 2, but NGO with the elements, and evolving in a meeting of ICH NGO. More, all of them are working in our capacity. That is, I think, it's a rising problems with when we're talking with the interviewers. There is a lack of budget focusing to capacity building of the convention and participation in the meetings, lack of exchange of good practice between the NGOs, hard communication with governments, lack of programs, benefit focus to accredited NGOs on national and international level in the scope of the convention. and I heard some suggestion for development of our work. It's involving in a sharing project with between the accredited NGOs, capacity building program from UNESCO Art Center to our ICH forum, joint meeting between state parties and NGOs, and sharing good practice, more organizing meetings in regional working groups. I can say this, and maybe I hope the time is
Okay.
not increase the time.
Thank you.
You very much. I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Kaloyan, for that great presentation. Now, I'd like to simply remind everyone that Robert Barron is co-chairing this session with me. He's with us. He's had some difficulties, I think, connecting with his computer, but he's got his iPhone with him, and that's working. So, hello, Robert. Good to see you.
Hello. I apologize for my tech difficulties. I'm trying to work them out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, things are. Well, Robert will be. He'll be sort of giving the concluding remarks. And by all means, Robert, if you have anything to add to what I've already said, don't hesitate to jump into the discussion. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Great to see you. Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll share my screen, just wait a minute here. Okay. Okay, can you see it? Okay, so I'm going to just sort of present, following up on what Kaloyan has said, just give some general idea of the project, and then go on and present some of the results that I've had for the region that I was working on, which is Region 1, Western Europe and North America. I just wanted to put a view of Colombo, Sri Lanka, because that's where we're supposed to be, and so unfortunately we're not able to go. But I did want to put a view here of the city, the beautiful city of Colombo, which we will not be able to visit this time, but perhaps maybe in the near future. Now, I just wanted to skim over the main points of the mandate that we had for this mapping exercise of the expertise of the NGOs. And it was basically to create a methodology and a model to have better knowledge of the expertise of the NGOs. And we actually had quite a tight time frame to do this, September to December. We have now completed the survey. The survey was done, and Kaloyan very nicely presented the main results of the survey. And then we went on, that was done in September, and then we went on in October, November, December to do the one-to-one interviews. So these were the terms of reference as defined by the Living Heritage Unit. Our first chore was to review the relevant documents regarding the decisions of the governing bodies, as well as the forms, the application forms for accreditation and for reporting. We were then asked to do a survey, an online survey with all of the NGOs. We got a fairly good response rate around, I think Kaloyan mentioned it, around 85 or 90. And this was to have a better idea of the work, skills, expertise, experiences, and involvement of the NGOs in the implementation of the convention. Once that was accomplished, we went on and did one-to-one interviews with a selection, a sample, shall I say, of 64 NGOs to verify and complete the survey. So that was, and then we were to define the vocabularies or list of concepts, pardon me, to be used in the indexation of competencies of accredited NGOs, okay, taking into account the data arising from the surveys and the interviews. So the deliverables were a draft, a two-page guideline to implement the relationships between the accredited NGOs and these concepts or vocabularies. Undertake the indexation of accredited NGOs according to the guidelines. Design illustrated schematic texts in both English and French for each accredited NGOs. These are 1 to 2 page summaries of the expertise of the different NGOs. And then finally draft an analytical report of about 50 pages in English, which would summarize and synthesize our results. So we are taking this opportunity to present some of the initial findings of our survey and interviews. We'd like to discuss them with you, exchange, and also solicit your input in this work. Now, initially, the Secretariat or the Living Heritage Unit asked us to prioritize the NGOs from underrepresented regions, which were Africa, Arab states, Latin America, and the Caribbean. That is exactly what we did. But it was sometimes difficult to get interviews from NGOs from some of those regions. And we therefore had to make some slight adjustments and increase slightly the number of NGOs that we did from regions that were better represented. So in our, we'd like to, as I said, pursue this discussion with you. This is why we're going to have breakout groups and by regions. And you know, we'd like to have your feedback on the work we've done, and also maybe have you share ideas on, you know, innovative vocabularies on ICH that you're using in your NGOs, but also new methods for safeguarding. If you know you have anything to share along those lines, it would be greatly appreciated. Views on periodic reporting and views on improving the application forms. I'm going to very quickly present the initial findings of my region. We're going to proceed by region, start with region 1. Kaloyan has sort of jumped a bit ahead of us because he presented the synthesis of the survey and also the results of his interviews from his region. But we're going to go, I'm going to present quickly you know, some of the initial findings that I have had for this region. There are 14 interviews. I conducted 13 myself, and Robert Barron did 1 from the US. So it was basically 2 from the US, 2 from Canada, 1 from the UK, 1 from Norway, 1 from Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, 2 from France, because France has 17 NGOs. It is the country that has most NGOs accredited, Portugal, Italy, and Turkey. So this is a huge region with about 100 NGOs. We've done 14. So the first key findings, I would say I'm summarizing here, the application, regarding the application forms and domains of expertise. The requests that I've gotten are, you know, NGOs generally want the forms to be more specific about the domains of expertise. They would also find that it would be useful to create hierarchies in the lists of domains by indicating, you know, which they feel they are strongest in, to the weakest, or the ones where they have less expertise, or sort of create categories where you would list, you know, the 5 domains where you have the most expertise, or the 2 domains where you have most expertise, etc. There's also a request, well, several requests to widen the domains that are in the convention, so that we can include things like games and sports, traditional knowledge about the environment and climate change. There's an entry there, of course, on traditional knowledge about nature and the universe, but there has been requests to widen that, to have things on food and legal customary practices and ICH and crisis situations. So I think, you know, there is a desire to widen the list of domains. There's also, with relation to safeguarding practices, I found very interesting, my discussions with Daniel Carpenter from the Crafts Foundation in the UK. They have an endangered crafts list, which is made up of hundreds and even thousands of entries, and the list has it has also been used by Newfoundland, the Heritage Foundation in Newfoundland, and it has, in their opinion, raised awareness of the public. It has attracted media attention, and it has generated discussion, which is rather positive and not negative. So this is quite an interesting tool, I found. There's also been requests to have more training in project management and tools to train communities to train themselves. And I thought this was a very interesting idea because I think it's important for the communities to have the tools necessary to train themselves and not depend on cultural brokers or people from outside to train them. So I think we could do maybe quite a lot of interesting work in that area. Also develop business models to make ICH in communities more sustainable. Small business models that will increase participation of communities, businesses that they can manage, and I think there could be a lot of interesting work done on this. It has been suggested by several NGOs that I interviewed, and also the integration of ICH safeguarding measures with the protection of natural and historical sites, buildings, collections, artifacts. So,
Laurier,
yeah.
Sorry, this is Robert. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Laurier, if you could just wrap up in 2 minutes because we're running a little bit short.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of new concepts and vocabularies, one of them has been to make better use of the internet, for example, but also new ways of meeting and organizing discussions. Having short 5-minute presentations, for example, on a specific theme for short periods of time, 1 to 2 hours, sort of inspired from speed dating practices. Keeping discussions informal and open and relaxed. And in terms of challenges, well, one of those is teaching ICH in schools, achieving ethnic and gender equity and safeguarding of ICH, developing public policies on ICH. This has been a challenge for many NGOs in the region that I looked at. Completing application forms for communities without academic training, and this is, not just something that is a challenge in unrepresented regions, and applying public funds for communities, helping communities apply for public funds. These are the main points. I know we're running out of time, and so I'll stop here and go on to the next presenter, who is it you, Janet? Or no? Who's
it should be Gustavo.
Oh,
from
Gustavo,
Latin
yes,
American
Gustavo.
Caribbean.
Gustavo, are you
Yes,
there?
hello.
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
I'm going to stop sharing. Okay.
Hello, how are you? Good morning. Just give me a second. It's really easy what I'm going to show. It's not basically what we found of the NGOs working in the region. So give me just a second. Okay, you can see it there, no?
Yeah.
So basically for Latin America and the Caribbean, we are now 10 accredited NGOs. And there was this confusion that we thought Curacao, since it's in the Caribbean, was from the region. Actually, they're part of Region 1, being from the Dutch government. So, but well, from the 10 countries, from the 10 NGOs that are present in Latin America and the Caribbean, only one of them I couldn't reach. Unfortunately, I tried by many means possible, but I couldn't reach the Centro de Trabajo Indigenista, which is an NGO from Brazil, a very large NGO, very nice work. I knew them time ago, but unfortunately no chance to contact him. But we really got the chance to talk with all the rest of the accredited NGOs from the region and introduce the work of the forum, also to check on the survey. Some of them didn't receive it, so we updated also the contact information and the people responsible for answering, because this is something that happens within the organizations. They change people, but they forgot to update the information on the UNESCO website or send a letter to UNESCO, and to the forum would be nice as well, just to keep an update contact information for each NGO. As you can see, almost all of the NGOs from our region has attended either a COM, an extraordinary meeting, or the General Assembly. Basically, they're most focused on the national level. Some of them are, a couple of them are regional, very root-based, no? And the other thing is, we found that they're working basically, we can say, in handcraft, and then we have a strong community base, and then public policy, and finally we have inventories and food as main strengths and focus of the NGOs. So basically, we need to discuss among the NGOs of the region, and of course, once we have the information that Kaloyan shared us at the beginning, for each regions, we still have to make this difference, because one of the big findings I had by doing the interview is that we tend to answer questions by the possibility and the capacity we have of performing a given task or a given field, rather than actually answering of what we are doing. So this is important to differentiate, to get a better sense of what each NGO is doing in the region, and in that sense, help to strengthen the work, their actual work, understanding what they can do, but not against what they actually do. No, but that's it. Thank you very much. That was my very brief and very concise presentation.
Okay, well, thank you, Jorge.
Yes.
Thank you so much, especially for being very to the point. So now I'll call upon Janet to present the results of Group 4. Janet.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, very well.
I shared it. Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say hello to everybody, and what a pity we're not doing this in person. It would be so nice to be able to meet you all face to face. And also a big thank you to the NGOs from all regions who submitted the surveys, and also, of course, those who were ready to be interviewed as well. I know it's a lot of call on people's time and effort and energies, and it's much appreciated. I just want to say that what I'm going to be presenting here is very much a qualitative view. This is the sort of color, the context, where the survey is giving us more hard sort of quantitative information. And to some degree, of course, this is then subjective as well, but subjectivity is not necessarily a bad thing. Right, so what I just put here is, we have 27 accredited NGOs in Group 4 out of 40 states parties. We received 16 survey responses, which is actually, I think, proportionately quite good compared with the total. And of these, 11 were interviewed. 3 from India, 2 from Republic of Korea, 1 from China, 1 from Mongolia, 1 from Iran, 1 from Indonesia, 1 from Kyrgyzstan, and 1 from Bangladesh. Of course, Asia Pacific is absolutely huge, so it's always going to be pretty selective. Unfortunately, the Pacific countries are not well represented amongst accredited NGOs in our region, and so they're not included, unfortunately, here. And this is just to show you the fact that you'll see that India has 8 accredited NGOs, Indonesia 3, and Republic of Korea 4, which to some degree explains why some countries had more than 1 NGO interviewed. So I don't want to spend time on the domains, and I can't spell industries either, I notice. But 1 or 2 points I wanted to make. First, that handicrafts in our region are very much tied to the notion of creative industries, although equally as part of comprehensive cultural models. The second, there is quite an interesting focus on, practices and knowledge related to the environment, agriculture, husbandry, animal husbandry, food, etc. And sacred sites also are an important cultural model or cultural complex for us. But important point too is that for some NGOs, they saw themselves as covering a range of domains and they're focused more on safeguarding strategies, whereas for others it might be a focus on a single element. Equally, I think all NGOs did see whatever they were doing as, in a very holistic way, that it wasn't any particular domain separate from others. Sorry, this is a little bit heavy in information, this slide, but you just see in terms of kind of the frequency that I felt, those areas that there was a big focus. Inventorying remains a very big focus, interestingly enough, including in some cases actually designing strategies, national strategies, and also working with communities on that. Also documenting, recording, especially endangered elements. There was a big focus on that too, and disseminating that information in various ways. Contributing to development both of safeguarding policies and even legislation in some cases. Yes, working with young people in various ways is a big focus, and also supporting bearers to make sustainable livelihoods based particularly on handicrafts products through the use of various models and approaches is also important. Education, both formal and non-formal. And notice the non-formal education includes actually using traditional transmission institutions as part of that approach. Another one that's interesting is ensuring respect for the expertise that bearers themselves have, because in some cases there's a strong sense that bearers are seen as kind of almost a second class with regard to, let's say, trained teachers. And providing certification, for example, is one way of dealing with that. And this also speaks to a broader issue of social inclusion for marginalized communities, often ethnic minority communities in our case. And the last is providing cultural spaces and managing these, where groups of bearers who share certain ICH elements can gather for that purpose, including sometimes across borders, not just in one country. Important safeguarding themes that came up. Environmental conservation was a big one and related, for example, to sacred sites. Also awareness raising about the environment and use of eco-friendly materials based on ICH, etc. Also disaster relief efforts, particularly with regard to post-disaster resilience. And this, interestingly, speaks very much to the psychological support that's important, and included work with other agencies than UNESCO. And of course, Asia-Pacific region has, unfortunately, a lot of natural disasters. Gender equality, definitely. And this, interestingly, included using the resource of traditional cultures themselves in some cases to, as it were, push back against gender discrimination based on, let's say, more modern cultural models. The other, also almost opposite to that, was in supporting female practitioners of traditionally male-dominated elements. Lastly, and this I found very interesting, in more than one case, social and behavioral transformation to combat domestic violence through ICH. So in terms of specific expertise, methodological approaches, definitely networking was a big one. National level, regional, and peer-to-peer through the forum. Developing projects and administering projects. This is another one. In other words, a few NGOs, rather than undertaking projects directly, saw themselves in that role. And providing expert support to bearer communities, whether that be a sort of managerial, marketing, through communication strategies, etc. An important one also was building trust with bearer communities initially, and also being trusted and respected at level of government, whatever, to be a bridge between these different sides. Rural development for us, again, was important. And one example was a multi-sectoral heritage project, which involved a whole village. Working with ethnic minorities, again, was a big one. And especially raising the visibility of their ICH to improve the social inclusion of these minorities. And also, in some cases, cross-border activities with overshared heritage. This is the second of the same topic, second slide. Another was that, in some cases we have NGOs with very much recognized expertise, officially recognized, whether academic or other, and that was, and membership of national and even regional committees, which allowed those NGOs to leverage that expertise to influence policymakers particularly. And of course, this leads into providing policy advice and including designing national policies, which is an important point. Some of our NGOs actually have extensive international intergovernmental expertise through, for example, members who might have previously held quite significant positions within the UNESCO framework. And
if you could
those
wrap
that
up,
are,
please.
yeah, I'm almost there. Okay, Robert. The last point on this slide, the interdisciplinary membership is important too, which is about bringing in a range of expertise. Challenges, nationalism, cultural intolerance, big ones at the moment. Also official resistance to the diversity of ICH and even to NGOs themselves. Access not being granted to capacity building workshops, that's something I think we have to think about, and lack of funding always. So what can NGOs in the forum do? Certainly support other NGOs in their country and their region. Obviously, capacity building by the forum, development of the forum itself in the intergovernmental setting can obviously help the status of NGOs in their countries. Capacity building and better communication strategies. Lastly, future actions. I will just pick one or two from this. I was very interested by the proposal for developing an internship scheme amongst ANGOs that the forum could administer. Maybe increasing regional cooperation through the Category 2 centres at a formal forum to Category 2 centre level, and pushing for a dedicated seat with speaking rights at intergovernmental meetings. Thank you very much. That's me done. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Janet. Thanks so much. Now we'll go on to the next presentation, which will be done by Sekou Bert, and he will be presenting his work on Region 5A Africa. Bert, are you there? Hello, hello, Sekou.
Can you hear me
there
now?
you are. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, do you want to share your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen. My presentation is in French.
Okay.
And I am able to take questions either in French or in English. Okay. Please
Okay.
allow me to share my screen, please.
Okay.
Et merci pour votre attention.
Thank you for your attention. Now, the results we are presenting here are a summary of all of the conclusions that we drew. But it's important to understand as well that we have highlighted a certain number of conclusions in order to focus on the main aspects. Now, I worked with my colleague on a number of interviews, and these are our conclusions. Now, out of all the accredited NGOs in the region, we were able to interview 10 via Zoom. So we had 9 individual interviews and a focus group with 2 French-speaking NGOs from Mauritius and Togo and 1 English-speaking NGO from Uganda. From the English-speaking countries, we have Kenya, Uganda, and Nigeria represented. And from the French-speaking countries, well, we have them on the screen. Now, we see that there was a diversity of transversal themes and a unified governance policy that integrates the 2003 Convention in the national constitution of certain countries in West and Eastern Africa. Remarkable work has been done in the field of formal and non-formal education, particularly in schools, universities, and at the local level. Now, projects in equitable and gender-based access to land has been remarkable. Women to play a key role in some communities. We also noted expertise in the passing on of intangible cultural heritage through food security practices, through women's groups in some communities, researchers, practitioners, and so on.
There's an emphasis on capacity building at the heart of those initiatives. So this can be informal or non-formal education to intangible cultural heritage, especially for schools, universities, and local authorities, as I've said earlier. There's also a very important aspect, which is that traditional authorities, young people play a very important role to play a sustainable role in the transmission of heritage. Now, what are the challenges? There are many challenges, but we can summarize them in 4 points. First of all, there are questions about human and institutional capacity building. The NGOs that took part in the interviews all have voluntary staff, permanent staff, but not very high in number. NGOs do not have enough human resources, technical, financial, and material resources that is equal to their ambitions. Collaboration and complementarities between accredited NGOs and public authorities in most of the state parties to the Convention of 2003 remain under tactical reflection in most countries. But having said all that, the question is how we can take up this challenge in a sustainable way. What comes out of the interviews is that the most sustainable approach consists in consolidating mutual exchanges with sustainable capacity building programs, whilst building up a collective of human, technical, financial, and material resources that are up to the task, and strengthening the network through virtual methods by granting a virtual space to NGOs in underrepresented regions for free. Thank you very much for your attention. That's all for now.
Bien, merci beaucoup, Berthe, pour cette présentation.
Thank you very much, Bert. Thank you for this presentation.
Et qui a respecté le temps à la lettre. Merci. Alors, now we will be able to
sticking to the allotted time.
Following presentation, which will be made by Reem Sakir, and she will be presenting her work on Arab states, Region 5B. Reem?
Okay, thank you, Laurier. I am aware of the time, so I'll try to be very quickly. I'll try to be very quick in my presentation. First of all, I just want to thank all the NGOs who took part in these one-to-one interviews, and also my colleagues from the steering committee who helped in getting this task done. So I'm gonna just go full screen here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so there are 8 accredited NGOs in the Arab states, and there was about a 60% response rate in the one-to-one interviews, which is slightly different than the response rate that we got in the surveys. And that's because we did a bit of follow-up with these one-to-one interviews. The NGOs that responded were from Mauritania, Syria, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. Some of the general observations that were picked up during these interviews is that the presence of the Category 2 centers or UNESCO affiliated centers were quite a useful tool for NGOs, and provided assistance not only to their work, but to them becoming accredited in the first place and knowing about the convention. Also, there was a general kind of reiterating the fact that these NGOs play a really important role of the liaison between the government and the ICH communities that they work with. Most of the experience or the skills that were being presented have to do with documentation, informal education, research, inventorying, archiving, things like that, as well as, of course, them having experience in working in emergency situations or conflict or post-conflict, considering the situation of the region. There were recommendations for when dealing with or providing information to UNESCO or the ICH NGO forum, or filling out forms, that visual forms of information be accepted. So this has to do with, let's say, language barriers or things like that. And also there was a general kind of agreement that the working groups of the ICH NGO forum are a valuable channel of communication, but that these working groups have become less active in recent times. Now, although the interviews and the surveys were about mapping the expertise and the skills and the competencies of NGOs, a lot of discussion revolved around the needs or the challenges of the region. And I think this was important to highlight or to speak about today, considering that the Arab states is an underrepresented region. So some of the challenges which were repeated a lot was that there is a lack of funding. A lot of these NGOs are volunteer-based, or a large part of each NGO is volunteer-based. So there's a lack of funding there. I forgot a word there, but when referring to the forms and how easy that the UNESCO forms are to fill out regarding like any reports or the accreditation form in itself. So although these forms are well structured, they were thought to be too long, a bit difficult in filling out, but also there was that language barrier, considering that they can only be filled out in English or French. Some of the challenges that the NGO spoke about as well is that when they work on minority heritage, so specific kinds of heritage, this heritage and then their work is sometimes not considered a priority for national authorities, and then they get less support, less funding, and also that the fact that there's limited networking and communication with other NGOs within the region as well. And of course, the fact that the Arab NGOs are underrepresented within the UNESCO framework, and then just the overall situation of the region. Some of the needs that were outlined was that these NGOs need capacity building. They also mentioned the fact that the presence of Category 2 centres or UNESCO affiliated centres are quite effective, and when they are involved with the activities of these centres, they are benefiting from them. But the issue is that they're not easily accessible. I mean, they're only in limited countries, and their activities are also limited. They would also like there to be more direct and up-close interactions with NGOs, and actually these one-to-one interviews were considered that, and so the NGOs that we spoke with actually welcomed this interview that we did, and they felt like it was a good opportunity for them to connect, raise their concerns, and learn more about the direction that NGOs are heading towards under the convention. And that's a really brief summary of the Arab states region. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reem, for the presentation. Some very interesting points there. So we're really a little bit behind. I'm gonna right away ask Robert to present the work that he has done with the international NGOs, and then Robert, you're gonna give us some concluding remarks, right?
Yes, I am. Can you see my screen?
Yes, very well.
Okay. I'm going to try and avoid overlap with what others have presented. Just to say, first of all, that I dealt with international NGOs as well as internationally engaged NGOs that were situated in one country and that identified themselves as internationally involved. To answer a question that was on chat, we tried to skew the interviews to organizations that are in underrepresented regions. So I did a couple of those as well, and my colleagues in the steering committee did that as well. And we with our questions, we had a list of questions, but they were both directive questions, semi-directed questions, and open-ended questions that enabled NGOs to speak about their concerns as well as about their expertise. I'm going to start by speaking about what most struck me and was most eye-opening was speaking to ICOMOS and ICON. We haven't named organizations here, but I wanted to single out these sister heritage organizations because their structures and the relationship with UNESCO suggest for ICH NGO Forum some pathways to the future, showing how we might develop as an organization, including our professional development and the sharing of expertise. Both of them are decentralized. The national chapters drive most of their activity, and they have international committees. So the activities happen nationally, and especially with ICHNGOs regionally as well. And the regional meetings every 2 months. The general meetings every 3 years. There's not anything comparable to Intergovernmental Committee, and UNESCO has a smaller role. It's minimal for ICOM and for ICHNGOs. They make recommendations for nominations to the World Heritage Committee and for the recommendations to maintenance of sites. But what we're seeing with ICOM and ICHNGOs is they're driving their respective fields. They don't have the very large role that governments and that that UNESCO Secretariat has in the ICH world. So it might point to our future. They also maintain distance from their governments and for their autonomy as NGOs. And they have paid administrative staff in their central offices. And we're straining at the bit in the steering committee, very frankly. We're volunteers. And I think it's at some point we'll want to see that we have paid administrative staff. So those are instructive, what we learned from ICHNGOs and ICOM. I interviewed international organizations of scholars, of researchers who work with ICH. Those are ethnologists, folklorists, and ethnomusicologists. ICH has been at the center of the work for decades, and over a century, in fact. They do in-depth, contextualized documentation, not simply inventory. The protocols for informed consent, including release forms, and release forms are very important thing to do with inventorying, and something that should be developed more in the UNESCO ICH universe. They've also maintained archives of ICH materials. They've been doing this for over a century. Archives are critical for maintaining enduring records of materials that are documented for the communities that originate them. Their data management protocols and standards they've developed for physically secure storage, for formats and metadata, to make the data publicly accessible, especially to source communities. And they've developed ethical standards for personal data privacy, which are adapted particularly for the digital age. These organizations do extensive research on the impact of listings, how ICH is transformed and changed, and the impact of tourism. There's some interesting things that they do, in particular music being used as a tool for healing and as a vehicle for conflict resolution. And in these disciplines, which have had a history of certainly a certain degree of colonial dimension of people studying other cultures and cultures that aren't their own, there's an emphasis on decolonization of the disciplines, shared authority, co-authorship. When a project is done, they do that in collaboration with communities. Okay, now I'm going to try and zip through several themes that I saw in the particular things that some NGOs do that are interesting and haven't been covered here. The protection of intellectual property, advising bearers on protecting, in this case, with the NGO I spoke to about their textile traditions, protecting the motifs and patterns, and their workshops that lawyers lead for that purpose. Repatriation involves a return of recordings that are collected in the past to source communities, high quality digital recordings. This is equivalent to the repatriation of objects to their source cultures that's happening worldwide. Repatriation acts as a stimulus to revitalizing music. There's ceremonies for repatriation, which is work with communities to develop their archives and educational materials as a result and as a post-repatriation event. As has been mentioned before, there is work with immigrants, refugees, and minorities, ICH programs to share traditions across cultures. They share them across the cultures themselves that are minority cultures as well as with the majority cultures. And this sharing is used as a tool for learning the language of the new country and for social integration and to counter stereotypes. And in one particular case, it developed in association with social workers. Another area is participatory activities and education that's been largely covered. Workshops particularly function as lecture demonstrations where a bearer will show how to make something and the audience will do a hands-on activity. And we spoke about integration into curriculum, I believe, and also about programs for school children for transmission and learning traditions. We've covered this, productions in social media, policy advisory as well. that's including development of heritage tourism with governments. And in one instance, an NGO works with a government to use proverbs as a diplomatic tool, using metaphors and indirection as a way of, as a tool for diplomacy. And so just to conclude, again, expanding upon and reiterating on what my fellow steering committee's members mentioned about communication flow and engagement with the forum. It's a feeling UNESCO should give more importance to NGOs for ICH implementation. There were comments that it's not easy to understand what NGOs can do for the convention. And as we think about what we do moving forward for the forum, this is an important question to consider. It's difficult to understand periodic recording and accreditation applications among some NGOs, particularly those that aren't accredited and would like to be. There's a need to explain questions and surveys, the ones that we did, one we did ourselves, we believe, as well as others that come from UNESCO and other entities. The forum should be more involved in other activities. There's too much of a dominance of English in the work that we do in the forum, and the need for better channels of communication, which we discussed here, and the value and the usefulness of working groups. So I can proceed now to my distinguished co-chair, Laurier, to finish the reporting. And we'll give ample time and the time allotted for regional groups to meet in their subgroups, and we'll just cut off a little bit of the presentation at the end of what they presented, but there'll be that opportunity. So I'll turn it over to you, Laurier.
Thank you so much, Robert. So we're a little behind time, but we'll try to catch up. Now, what we'll do is break into breakout groups. The breakout groups will be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so we'd like to simply invite you to join the breakout group which represents your region.
Laurier, just to interrupt you for one moment. So I was going to do concluding remarks and summing up, and I'll just cut that off. But I do have extensive notes of our discussion, and I'll try and weave them into the presentations if we have time.
Okay, yeah. So do you want to keep those for the end then, Robert?
Yes, in the interest of time, and I think it's very important and precious for the and very valuable for the regional groups to meet. So we want to give a priority to
right. Okay, thank you so much. So I'm now going to call upon our UNESCO technician to send us the information we need to go into breakout groups. So as Zoom, are you there, please?
Yes, I am here. So I've just launched the breakout session, the breakout rooms. So you just have to click on the button breakout rooms, and then just join the room that you want to go to. I have put in commas the region, so it's easier.
Could somebody please review what numbers correspond to each region very quickly?
So number 1 is.
It's written.
Go ahead. Yes.
It's written, yes, on the room's name.
Okay.
Okay. Can you tell us where the room names are indicated?
So you have the plus function, and then you have the breakout rooms icon, which should be 4 little squares. You click on it, and then you have the list of rooms, and you just have to click on the one you want to join.
May I just add another point? You have to go to the more, or I do anyway, at the bottom right of the screen.
Yes.
If you click on that, then you can enter the breakout room menu.
Okay. How long are we going to take in the breakout room?
I suggest we're making a decision on the spot here. I say we should go to 2:45. Does that sound okay for everybody?
Yeah, that would give us 25 minutes. And then we would have 15 minutes to report. So please, we need to have for each region a rapporteur or a reporter. So we'd like to invite you, each group, to select someone, nominate someone, or have someone volunteer to do that, and to summarize in a few points the results of their discussions,
So let me just add that maybe somebody can appoint themselves a facilitator for the discussion, and also that the note taker will also be the person reporting.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Group VA5 Africa. Oh, the icon disappeared.
Yeah. More has just disappeared from my screen too.
We were automatically brought back to this room. Was this on purpose?
Well, the rest of us can't go anywhere at the moment. It's even worse.
Yeah.
We've lost our possibility of moving.
I see.
It seems.
Zoom, can you give us, because actually...
I'm Zoom, and I think that there is something wrong because someone should, I think that someone that's caused, it's either you or me, but I don't think it's me. I'm just going to relaunch them because someone stopped them actually. That's why you were coming back.
Okay.
Thank you for your help.
Somebody close the rooms.
Yes.
Yeah. So be careful what you do, guys.
Yeah. Host and co-host must be careful.
So Janet, you will be joining, right? The room?
Yeah, I'll come into the group forum. It's okay, Ananya. That is if you want me.
No, because we were clueless because you were not there. Now we have been.
No, because I was waiting until we finished the discussion about what we were doing before I left, and now I can't go anywhere. So, they've come back again. At the bottom of the screen, you see the breakout rooms. Okay.
À Zoom.
Yes.
OK, c'est Laurier. C'est drôle parce que moi, j'ai pas l'option de me joindre à une salle. Est-ce que c'est parce que je suis...
I don't have an option to choose a room. Yes, it's because you're host. But you can click on the button, or you can choose to go to each different room manually if you wish.
Okay. So if I want to go to Western Europe and North America, I just click on Western Europe and North America.
Yes, you just click on it and you just click on join.
Is that right?
Yes, you're going to be.
Excuse me.
I said you just have to click on join on room 1, Western Europe and North America, and then you'll be able to join, and you can also come back to the plenary when you wish to do.
Okay. So to join, do I just click on Western Europe and North America? Is that it?
There is a join that's on the right corner of the.
Okay.
You just have to click on this button.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, I see. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh, great, Laurier. We were actually starting and just putting in the chat already who we are, not to lose too much time.
Okay,
and
good.
As it was not completely sure whether you would join or not, we were already agreeing on what to do, but we were not completely sure. Is the idea that you will be facilitating?
No, I'd rather have someone else do it. You know,
I can do the facilitation, but the assignment wasn't completely clear. Should we reflect on what we have seen?
Yes, well, two things. Reflect on what you've seen, and also, you know, make suggestions, you know, drawing from your experiences, from the NGOs of, you know, the experiences of the NGOs. So, Jorien, are you going to be facilitating?
I can do so. That's fine.
Okay, great. That would be great. Yeah, so those are the two things, you know, just reacting to what you've heard, but also having some input from your NGOs, because unfortunately we weren't able to interview everyone. And so we wanted to take advantage of this meeting, you know, to get input from NGOs that were not interviewed. And or even those that have been interviewed, if they have some additional comments, those would be appreciated as well. Okay.
Okay, great. I will open the floor. I was one of the interviewees, so I will not talk too much unless to facilitate you. Are there any comments after the presentations, either from our region or the more general tendency that you have seen and that you would love to share here? Who wants to open? Matti?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was very happy to hear all this work that has been done, and very grateful for the steering committee and for everybody who has been participating. I think this is very valuable and very important knowledge that we are gathering here, and it's easy to build upon this knowledge, our future activities. Some ideas, just we have been working with this Nordic and Baltic ICH NGO network here in the Baltic countries and in the Nordic countries, and we have already this exchange program that we have implemented, so that there is kind of a from one NGO to another NGO, like a weekend visit or something like that. And Janet was talking about the internship idea. I think that was very practical and very good thing. Maybe that we could do in the future. But just maybe to say this one very particular thing that got. But I'm very happy for the progress, and I'm very keen on having these regional, or these what do we call it? These regional groups more active now in the Zoom time. It's possible, and I'm hoping that we can. This will be kind of the beginning of it.
Thank you, Matti. I think Antoine also raised his hand.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's very appreciated to see this work, because it's a very needed work to know what we can do for the convention, what our capacities are as NGOs all across the world, and what is the thing that we see in, because we are the NGO umbrella, ICH umbrella for the province of Quebec in Canada, and we can see the results are quite the same as regard of the domains, you know, mostly a lot of music and dance, and we have more than 100, so it's kind of the same numbers of all across the world. So it's interesting to see mostly music and dance, and then a bit of craft and storytelling, and then you go down and down, and you have more of a environmental or natural how do you say that? Natural work anyway. And so yeah, thank you for this great work. I was just wondering what exactly were the criterias for interviewing. I asked in the chat, but there was no answer so far. Is it like when you have the survey, you look at some criterias and then you say, okay, I'm gonna interview somebody in France with those characteristics, or what were exactly the criteria?
Maybe Laurier can briefly answer the criteria that have been used for selection.
Yes. Well, the first criteria was to try to interview NGOs from underrepresented regions as much as we could. That was our priority. And as we progressed, and we wanted to have those first and foremost. And then as we progressed in the one-to-one interviews, we realized that some of the NGOs from those regions were not able to participate because of internet connections, bad internet connections, and people that were not available, etc. And so then we, because Western Europe and North America are very active, there's a lot of NGOs and they're very active in the forum. And in the convention, it was very clear from the information and the instructions that we got from the Secretariat that these should be, should not be prioritized. So we progressively opened up to North America and Western Europe. We tried to do our best to have a selection of NGOs, smaller NGOs that were, not very active or were not all that well known, or, that were requiring more information. And then medium size, and then larger ones. So it was basically, and then of course we were trying to, have a good geographical distribution as well. So we ended up having like 4 from North America and 10 from Western Europe. But it's not a beauty contest. We did our best to try to get a large variety of NGOs, to try to get a wide view of what was going on. And we were also hoping to take advantage of this meeting here to get feedback from the ones that, were not interviewed. So it's, we hope that this will continue, and then, hopefully we'll be able to maybe interview all of the NGOs within that this will be an ongoing process, and that we will be able to interview, more NGOs in the future. So that's it. I think Christine Catherwood has her hand up as well.
That's right. Christine?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm from Heritage Saskatchewan, also in Canada. And I just want to thank everyone for their words already this morning. And thanks for that question, Antoine. I was wondering as well how the various NGOs that were interviewed were chosen. And I just wanted to share, this is very timely and topical for us, because we've been commissioned by the Federal Provincial Territorial Cultural Heritage Table here in Canada to do a study on the state of ICH in Canada right now. And for those of you who don't know, Canada has not ratified the convention. So we're looking at what is being done in the field of ICH right now, despite Canada not actually having ratified. And so obviously I think there's N9 UNESCO accredited NGOs in Canada right now. I think we started with them and expanded outwards to see how ICH is doing in Canada. And I can say what I've heard this morning from around the world, a lot of those similar challenges and opportunities are being found right here in Canada as well right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you maybe, Christine, want to, without revealing any national secrets, give us just a few of these sort of key outcomes of the survey? Maybe just 1 or 2.
Sure. One of the main things that's coming to the top of my head right now is that the actual terminology and the definition of ICH as a concept is not well understood in Canada. Mm-hmm. It seems that the term is it's more well recognized. We had a really good response for the survey we did, much higher than we anticipated. So it seems that there's a name recognition for intangible cultural heritage, but the actual understanding of what that means and the understanding of the convention is lacking in general, except for, of course, those key institutions, those key individuals, a couple of whom are here in this room right now, that across Canada, and a couple of provinces in particular that are very well versed in intangible cultural heritage. So that's, I think, an issue where the term is being almost misused sometimes, or misapplied, or not fully understood or fully applied. So I see that as a bit of a problem going forward, but also it's encouraging that there is that recognition of the term, at least, that maybe the understanding of heritage is starting to broaden and expand in Canada. So that's one of the main things I found, or we found. And another, I guess, would be just the difficulties of approaching ICH in a country as large and geographically and culturally diverse as Canada from a national or federal level. That's really challenging to do. And so we're seeing that there's very differing ways of approaching ICH work in different regions in Canada, and some like Newfoundland and Quebec are really, I mean, they're, I would say, cutting edge even internationally in what they're doing, and other regions of Canada are doing nothing at all. And so there's a lot of work to do to approach this from sort of a state level.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Christine. Actually, I recognize it very much. And I think one of the contributions NGOs can do is to help strengthen this outreaching and sensitization about even the very beginnings of what is ICH and how can we communicate it to wider society and mainstream it, as we call it in Belgium. Are there any other ideas in the room or on the screen with the colleagues hearing the conclusions of the mapping so far? Not immediately. I will talk, and then you can just say when you want to speak. One of my ideas is more that actually we as a region here, we are quite strong. Laurier, I think maybe you should mute. We hear your
it's actually not
coming
me.
in.
It's
someone else.
Someone else, yeah.
Okay.
It's Maddie. Maddie is
okay. Yeah. Thank you for muting it. One of the ideas that I had, and that maybe we can offer, if you agree, is that we're quite strong in our region. We have more support often, also, even if it's still too little, but than other regions of the world. And is that we must be careful, of course, because we don't want to be the colonizers again. But on the other hand, we could offer to help other regions to work on capacity building and to join their energy for their region if they need some support. And I think if we could do that, it's also in the working group of Matti on the geographical distribution, that this could be one of the things. How can we, in a peer-to-peer system, how can we support each other, and how can we support the regions that need more development, but in a way that it helps them and that they are in the lead. But if we can facilitate or moderate or whatever, or give training on specific aspects, that we are also ready to help them in their needs.
Yes.
So that was one of my ideas.
Good, good. Maybe I see Daniel Carpenter is here from the UK, and maybe Daniel, I found very interesting your endangered lists of crafts list. Perhaps you could just talk to us a little bit about that, because I found it was an interesting model. Yes.
Yes, so we've been doing our red list of endangered crafts, which I got here, since 2017, and it was the first research of its kind in the UK to rank craft skills by the likelihood that they would continue to the next generation, based very much on similar listings in nature conservation, languages, that kind of thing, and based on it, ICH principles. So at the moment, this is our third edition, and we look at 244 craft practices within the UK, and we have a grading system. So we have critically endangered crafts, which we've got 56, and then endangered, we've got 74, and then we have currently viable. And then we look at the reasons around the listings. So there are various reasons. Many of these craft skills are held within the private sector, so they're small micro businesses or sole traders who keep these skills alive and pass them on through their businesses from generation to generation. And they're affected by kind of global effects of commerce. They're affected by the provision within the country to pass on skills. and Brexit as well, leaving the European Union has had an effect, and obviously COVID as well. So we're monitoring that, and we've committed to do so on a biannual basis for into the future. But it's been a really good way of mainstreaming the concept of ICH within the UK, because each time we publish a new edition, it gets picked up by the broadcast media and the print media. And it's often well known amongst the general public, even if they haven't heard of us as an organization, they've heard of this research. So we feel we are making inroads into getting ideas around ICH accepted by the general public. And it's great to see our work being influencing other regions, and the recent report that's come out in Newfoundland and Labrador with their Heritage at Risk report has been fantastic.
This could also be a model that could be shared, maybe the methodology that could be shared in a wider sense among NGOs doing this kind of research.
Yes, we've been asked by the Michelangelo Foundation, which is based in Geneva, to produce a toolkit so we could share our methodology with other countries. So we're hoping to be doing that within the next 12 months.
Great. And then maybe via the NGO forum, it can be also shared again in these networks. Great. Other ideas in the room? Not for the moment. How long do we have, Laurier?
2 minutes. I see Inge Gutzman is in the room, and she had they've been doing some interesting work, I find, with ICH and the environment. Maybe in 2 minutes, can you give us a summary of some of your innovative work, Inge?
Oh, thank you, Laurier. Well, maybe you see something different, as interesting as I do, but thank you for giving me the floor. So I see that one of our main focuses is also on the domain nature and knowledge about nature and the universe, and that's something where we are looking for more partners to exchange and to work together. And for example, this year we had a conference on water and ICH, and next year we'll have a conference on industry and ICH, and in 2023 on forest and ICH. So if somebody is interested to get in contact with us and to exchange, we would be very happy. And I think these fields of nature and knowledge of the universe is a little bit underrepresented, and we would be very happy to do more in this field and to also contribute as our NGO. Thank you.
Great. We have colleagues also in the Netherlands and in Flanders working on the same topic. So I guess there's a field for possible exchange also in the European context or in the Western context on that aspect. Other ideas?
We're just about, we've gone a bit over already, Jorien.
So we should leave the room?
I think we should go back to the plenary session.
Great.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry.
See you.
Okay. So just
thank you, Danielle, for reporting.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you all. Thank you all for your comments and suggestions. Very much appreciated. Thank you. On a fermé toutes les salles. Comment je fais? la salle. Ok, je quitte cette salle, oui. Ah non, quitter la salle de conférence. Okay, is everyone back in the main room now? We haven't lost anyone? Okay, so maybe we could proceed with the reports. Can you all hear? Is your sound on? Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so maybe we'll go now to the second part where people can present their reports. I'll have to ask you to be very short because we're really running out of time. So maybe we start with Region 1.
Thanks, Laurier. I'll just quickly then go through what we discussed. So first we heard from Matti, who's active in the Baltic and Nordic area, and they've just created an ICH network, including an exchange program with weekend visits. So he was talking about the opportunity for more regional networking. And particularly now that we have Zoom as a portal, is there more opportunities for the working groups to meet in between the main meetings? Then we heard from Antoine from Quebec, who said that he was talking a little bit about the domains that they cover, which is mostly music and dance. And for many organizations and NGOs, there is a particular focus within the domains, and that should be recognized. And then he asked about the criteria for selection for the interviews. So Laurier responded to say that the focus was on underrepresented regions, a selection of smaller NGOs, good geographical spread, and the fact that if you weren't selected for an interview, there's still opportunities to participate, because there's a hope that this will be the start of an ongoing program of more closer communication with each of the NGOs. And we heard from Kristin from Heritage Craft Saskatchewan. She said this was very timely because she's just been commissioned to do a study of ICH in Canada. And of course, Canada is not a ratified country. But she was looking forward to doing this work. She reflected on how well the terminology was understood within Canada, and she said there's still a lot of a lack of understanding of ICH as a concept within the country outside of the specific agencies that were involved in it. We talked about the difficulties in such a large country such as Canada, a large and diverse country, in approaching this from a national perspective. It's really important that we capture all of those perspectives, and there should be a recognition that that's quite difficult to do that centrally. We heard from Jorijn in Belgium about the role of NGOs and their responsibility to help mainstream this vocabulary. It's part of our responsibility to make the concept of ICH better known. And we talked a little bit about how we can spread our expertise to other working groups in other parts of the world. Can we offer support? Can we facilitate? Can we offer moderation? Can we offer training? But make sure that we don't do that in any way as from a position of colonizers. We're here to offer our capacities, but it's up to other regions to take us up on what they need. I talked a little bit about the research that we've done on the red list of endangered crafts within the UK and the methodology that we'd followed. And we're hoping to be able to share this methodology through a toolkit that's been commissioned by the Michelangelo Foundation for Endangered Crafts, and make this available to other NGOs. And then we briefly heard from Inga from Germany and some work that they've been doing on nature and the universe domain and having conferences on things like water and ICH. So that's a quick run through of what we discussed.
Thank you, but could I just please suggest that we have 66 people here. So I think as everybody else presents what their takeaways are and what the discussion is, maybe not necessarily mention each people, just try and give the general themes and the highlights. Okay, so I guess we're moving to region 1A or 2. Laurier.
Two, it should be 2.
2, okay.
I will present region 2. We was 5, only 5 in our region. 2 of person in Paris with low internet and we talk about the lack of focus budgeting for the NGOs of area. Common work with the national commissions must be working, and working group, regional working group. I think that we're talking that we must make 2 or 3 times a year, maybe every 2 months must make meetings. But I think that all regional working groups must make this. We're talking about the networking, and can get some application for programs in European Union about the culture sector, and make common work between the NGOs. We must have new trainings for the NGOs and capacity building for the convention knowledge between the NGOs and talking about that the capacity building from the UNESCO side, the Center 2 and ICH NGO forum must be done. Almost this is a thing that we discussed in our meeting now. And
thank you.
We discussed problems that must be improved.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on quickly to region 3, Latin America. So who was reporting for Latin America and the Caribbean? Gustavo?
Yes, I will do it. Just a quick brief. First of all, I'm very happy to see Leticia Caminero here from WIPO. Welcome. Hopefully, I'm sorry you didn't join the Latin American group, but so we had a really nice talk. We were only 3 organizations, Martina and Giovanni. Martin from Erigae, Gaye, and Giovanni from Mundo Espiral, both of them from Colombia. We talk about the need to create a Latin America umbrella organization just to be more in touch and talk about common goals and challenges that we face in the region. And we also talk about linking to the work with CRESPIAL. This is the UNESCO Center 2 for Latin America. And there is a link in the chat of the calendar of events listed by UNESCO. And I strongly suggest that you enter and see. Martin will be presenting with all the group. They developed this MOOC that will be now launched on Tuesday. So that's a big highlight. So I strongly recommend all present people to join. Thank you very much, Laurier.
Thank you, Jorge. Now, Region 4, Asia Pacific. Was there someone?
Yes, I was. This is Gora here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was asked to be the rapporteur, so I've written down 15 points, but I'm not going to read all of them. We had some comments, among others, from Aitpeva Gulnara from Kyrgyz and from Ananya Bhattacharya from India. And Janet Blake also made some comments. I also made some comments. We had participated in the mapping exercise and we'd appreciated. Janet explained at the moment that the result of the mapping exercise is still raw data and preliminary findings and still to be further analyzed. We had a question, will we be sharing the draft with the respondents? Then, just as the person who reported from Region 2 had suggested, we also had the same suggestion that we should have some regular regional meeting, at least once in a year, possibly organized in coordination with the Category 2 centers, of which we have 4 in Asia Pacific region. Janet also had made a comment that perhaps some work on disaster response work might be interesting. Our country has got a lot of disasters. We just had a volcanic eruption last week. Okay. There was a question about the ICH network, which was replied from Korea, in which people can, or NGOs can upload events themselves. And they wish to encourage networking as much as possible. Okay, I think overall that's 15 points, but I think summarizing that's what was the essence of what was presented in our group. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, the idea of more regular regional meetings has come up in quite a few of the suggestions that have been made. So I think that one, we should keep in mind definitely. Okay, so now we can go on to Group 5A, Africa, please.
Yes, it's Alain Mounian from Mauritius.
Okay.
And it's my great pleasure to be the reporter of the continent. We had 8 participants and we managed pretty well with struggling between English and French. So it took us a little more time. So the first point that we highlighted is that the survey indeed was very good survey for the group because 50% of respondents indeed participated. So we believe that we've been one of the groups that have showed the way in terms of interest for the issue. The second point is about the acknowledgement that overall there have been large areas of agreements through all the presentations. So we note with comfort that issues are shared issues around the world. But then we decided as well to look at what makes things a little bit more specific for the region of Africa and the Indian Ocean. One point about it is about the importance of getting physical contact, which is very important, despite the fact that we are experiencing a pandemic. one of the points that has been raised is the importance of getting in touch with each and every one. Then the other point would be whether it was viable to share the presentations beforehand. Now, we did have some explanation from Sekou, who is part of the team. One of the most important point that was raised was about the next step, so the way forward. Although it is true that there has been large areas of consensus on the issues and the way forward, proposed solutions, then we still believe that there need to be some sort of roadmap and action plan in terms of getting things done. So it would be interesting for us to know whether the steering committee has in mind a roadmap and an action plan. So that's it for the work that has been done by the Africa Indian Ocean Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Alain, for those very interesting remarks. So now we can move on to Arab states. Can the rapporteur?
Yes, I'll be reporting
okay,
on the Arab states.
Yeah.
Actually, I was quite sad because I was left in that room all alone. So unfortunately, there wasn't much of a discussion that happened because I was waiting for a friend to join me. Yeah, so I don't really have anything to report, but I guess this is just another example of how the underrepresentation of this region affects even the simplest of activities and exercises that we are trying to do. But yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, and maybe we can go to the next group.
Okay, thanks, Reem. Sorry about that, but now, so Robert, you could talk to us about the international NGOs, and then give us your concluding remarks. Okay.
Sophie Alpers will be giving international reviews, and then I'll...
Yes. Hello,
everybody. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Very nice to meet you. I'm Sophie Alpers from the International Society for Ethnology and Folklore, and we are part of the International NGOs group. So we elaborated, we had three main points of this discussion, I think. First, we elaborated on one of the points Robert showed in his slides, namely the opportunities of collaborations with archives. We think that there are a lot of opportunities archives can provide us with concepts and methodologies of collecting ICH. They can inform us about protocols of consent. They can inform us about the historical context of ICH, but we also don't have to forget that archives are, of course, also interested in contemporary ICH. This was one of the points we discussed. Then a second one, we would also like to emphasize the importance to bring together the international NGOs and to foster dialogue, for instance, about our understandings and concepts, also about our different understandings of concepts like heritage itself or like authenticity. And we think that a good dialogue about those concepts can sharpen our concepts and can really contribute to better understandings of concepts and how to work with them. And then the third point was about the fact that many scholars of the international NGOs are heavily involved in higher education. This is, of course, also a huge opportunity
I think we lost Sophie. If she doesn't come back, maybe I can just complete her sentence, and forgive me, Sophie, if you come on. So that she said it's a huge opportunity because the researchers, the scholars in ethnology, folklore, and ethnomusicology have been teaching ICH elements for about ICH elements. Or also for many years, there are also great opportunities for training for practitioners as well as administrators, as well as to learn conceptually about ICH. Sophie, you still there? Maybe I'll just segue right into my concluding remarks so we can swing into the next panel, if that's okay, Laurier. So I want to give a few very quick takeaways from our the rather short time we've been able to spend with each other. First of all, the responses that we got and that we discussed today were spectacular. They've greatly expanded our knowledge and understanding of the domains of expertise. This is what the Secretary wanted from us when they contracted with us for doing this mapping exercise. I had a list of about 30 different kinds of expertise that I won't go through now, but it's striking how many involve social problems, are interdisciplinary in character, that deal with things like disaster relief, spaces for ICH. We have a rich trove of information that will bring us forward, and I think will be really valuable, and I'm not understating it, for the forum and for UNESCO for years to come. So it's a very big thank you to all of you. The domains are domains that all of you have identified, and it's the work that's actually done by NGOs on the ground that hasn't come out into previous surveys. The second thing that came out of our couple hours together today was the methods for sharing expertise, and there's some great ideas there. Laurier mentioned initially with his interviewees about cafes, about speed dating. There was a lot of discussion about networking. We're seeing a great impulse in the breakout groups we just had for regional meetings, for the strengthening of regional networks. So this is something which is extremely important. I think perhaps we could have a listserv perhaps for the forum. There are other ways of connecting, and clearly people need to know more information about the forum, what we're doing. There's an interest in more activity, and much of that activity can come to regional areas. There was also mention by the African group about strategic planning, how we move forward. This is something we discussed within the steering committee, and we have some funds from UNESCO, and that may very well be the way we apply our funding. And if and when we do strategic planning, that's something that must involve all of you, because we need to think about the way forward as an organization in terms of our activities and sharing expertise. There were also concerns that were expressed very frankly about the relationship with UNESCO and about the forum itself. And these are something that certainly the steering committee, all the membership we're taking to heart. We'll think about how we can be more effective. And the working groups play an extremely important role in what we'll be doing moving forward. We're sorting out right now in the steering committee about, in discussion with the working groups Tuesday, I believe, on Tuesday, about how the work of the working groups is better articulated and connects with the work of the forum and the steering committee, the activities that are possible, and how to make the working groups more consistent in the way they operate, but also enabling working groups to be to carry out more activities on behalf of the forum. So that's my very, very quick takeaways. We look forward to your continued presence this afternoon in the next session and for the rest of the week. And thank you again so much to everybody for your response to the online survey. And as was mentioned before, we were limited in the number of face-to-face interviews. We were prioritized regions outside of Europe and North America, and we hope we can get to the rest of you very soon. So thank you. I don't know if you have any more remarks, Laurier, and we can segue to the next session.
Yeah, no, I think we can swing right into the next session, and that session is going to be chaired by Reem Sakir and Sekou Bert. So it's up to you now to present the session and the speakers.
Okay. Should I start, Bert? Okay, I'll start. Okay, so the next session, I don't want to make too long of an introduction, but it's about intellectual property, and intellectual property and intangible cultural heritage is becoming an increasingly important topic for ICH actors, including NGOs or the bearers in the communities themselves. But it's also one which is, from my personal experience, a complicated one to deal with. As you know, so much of it is unknown. So this is why I'm happy to chair this session today, and which is on the future directions of ICH, intellectual property, licensing, and new media. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, my colleague, Jorge Gustavo Caicedo, from the Encyclopedia of Cultural Heritage, Mexico. So thank you, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Bing. That's very kind. Very good Spanish, I should say. So I know we're a little stuck on time, so I will talk about straight to the point. So I wanted to talk about this concept of ICH to the future with intellectual property, licensing, and new media. No, so of course I will take the example of the Coco film, the Pixar film from Disney, and intangible cultural heritage. This film is from 2017. I guess everybody's seen it by now, but anyway, I will just go through the basics. So the background is the indigenous festivity dedicated to the dead. This is an element of Mexico culture that's been inscribed in 2008 in the third com. However, it was in the original proclaimed list of 2003. It's part of the representative list of intangible cultural heritage within UNESCO. Of course, the mariachi is also the string music, song, and trumpet. It's inscribed in 2011, and it's part also of the representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humankind. And finally, we have a file in development, which is the workshop of Tonas and Nahuales from Jacobo and Maria Angeles from the state of Oaxaca in Mexico for the Register of Good Safeguarding Practice. This is a file in development, but it's important for the case. So intellectual property and new media. Then we have Disney. What they do with the Pixar and Disney, they came to the country and they did this research. They traveled through different towns and cities and understand the celebrations of the Day of the Dead and register all the elements they could. And they saw that we were very festive and had the mariachi as well. And so they integrated the history with the song and the mariachi, and they made it a musical. And they even went further and incorporated another element from our culture, which is the alebrije, which was developed by Maestro Pedro Linares back in the 70s. And it was a very nice handcraft, which you can see it down. But they developed their own character, which is this character you can see on the screen. Well, what happened? This is the issue. So they decided to launch the film. They take all these elements from intangible cultural heritage. The good part is Disney made it a huge success all around the world. So everybody knows about the Day of the Dead, everybody knows about the mariachi, and everybody knows about the alebrijes. So my question is, didn't they know that before from Mexico? I guess yes. but Disney profited from it, and it's okay. But at the same time, it didn't really came back to the people or the bearers of the people who's really practicing this ICH. And there is an even more troubling thing. They developed this handcraft, traditional handcraft. They took it, they make it a character. And then when they launched the movie, they had to register the intellectual property. And then they built this license with Mattel, and they started producing plastic handcraft of traditional handcraft from Mexico. So it was really a shame in a way, no? This affects directly the workshops of traditional handcraft people. As you can see here, they're working on a daily basis in hand, the pieces one by one. And so we're putting this expression in jeopardy because now, you know, they're fighting against a different kind of product. I understand it's a different market, but then again, there's something to be thought about that. But this is not only subject to film. We can see that this problem about taking profit from other countries' patrimony is very common, no? Like you can see here with the French and the Museum of the Quiet Branly, they have this piece that they came to pick up in the 80s, and then this archaeological piece is being exhibited in the museum, and it's being profited in the museum as a symbol of the museum. But then again, the community where it was taken, and this was done in 1980, doesn't receive anything from it. It's a Chupícora, Guanajuato, is in Mexico, and so this is a common issue. So my reflection is traditional handcraft is transiting into new media. There is a transition, there is new fixation, and there is a new challenges for IP. So I would like to talk about also, this is an example of augmented reality they're doing now. And of course, the other issue is virtual reality. So we're getting, each time we're developing new media and new ways of promoting intangible cultural heritage, of preserving it, of safeguarding it. But at the same time, it comes with challenges and certain kind of risk of what could happen if we don't take these issues into account and really, really understand the possibilities, the good possibilities and the bad possibilities of this kind of new media. So basically, I wanted to do that. I'm looking forward to hearing Leticia and Boone, and Janet, of course, and then having a conversation. Thank you very much, Wim, for that.
Good.
Oh, wait, I'm trying to, give me a second. Oh, here.
Nice picture.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Gustavo. It took only 7 minutes.
Try to be sharp. Oh yeah, the Lion King. Yes. Totally.
Okay, Bert. Yeah, me? Okay, I thought Bert wanted to. Okay, well, thank you very much. I love the example of Coco. Yeah, it's really interesting to see how new media is like a double-edged sword, I guess. Like it's helping in promoting and exposing, you know, intangible cultural heritage, but at the same time, there's that issue of it becoming decontextualized and separated from the I guess the cultural space or the roots of the heritage. Okay, so our next speaker is you know, does not really need to be introduced, Professor Janet Blake from the Persian Garden Institute for Living Heritage in Iran. Please, Janet.
Thank you, I will, although I'm just trying to, oh, here we go. I couldn't find the thing I was sharing and now I found it. I've got too many tabs open on my, this is not right at all. Oh yeah, this is what I tried to share. Okay, can you see it?
It's still, it's still black. I can't see it yet. But
that's a bit worrying.
Yeah, maybe it's coming, but hasn't.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll start talking. Have you got anything yet?
Nope.
This is extraordinary. Usually I have these problems when it's paused. Why is it paused?
How about stop sharing and
I'm going to have to stop and start again. I didn't understand what happened there at all. Sorry, guys. I promise you I did the right thing.
I believe you.
But you do understand technology has its own.
We can see it now.
Spirit, and the gremlins were against me here.
Miraculously.
Yeah, okay. Look, I'm going to have to make a big apology after that incredibly interesting and very attractive presentation. This is getting a bit dry and legal, but I'll do my best not to be too heavy, okay? I'm going to try and place this discussion in a bit of a historical context, because we've been having this discussion in this field for years, for decades. But we aren't really out of the woods yet. And I wanted just to kind of explain some of those parameters. So we had back in 1982, this amazing definition of culture at the Mexico City Declaration, which is exactly the view of culture and cultural heritage that then became part of the 1989 UNESCO recommendation on safeguarding traditional culture and folklore, which of course was in many ways a basis for going forward to the 2003 convention. And there was this extremely important conference that was held in 1999, co-hosted by UNESCO and the Smithsonian in Washington, which was really looking back to see what 10 years of the recommendation had given and to reassess it. And as a result, I was actually invited to write this technical legal preliminary study. And, oh, this is interesting. My slides are not going down. This is worrying. Oh, I use that. And so some of the questions that were raised at that point were, what kind of instrument, number one? Okay, but since it's history, I won't go into that. The decision was taken to go forward with a new convention rather than a protocol to the 1972, for example, or even a protocol, I should say, to the Copyright Convention of 1951. And the question then is, what would be the scope of the subject matter? And so were we going to take a very broad cultural approach, which is closer to the Mexico City Declaration view, or are we going to somehow limit that understanding to fit it within an intellectual property framework? And I should say there was a very big pressure at the time from what was then the Copyright Division in UNESCO to place it squarely and firmly in the intellectual property framework, but understand this, in a way, only in that framework. So this was the battleground at the time, but the decision was taken partly, I should say, because of the existence of the recommendation, which took a broad cultural approach, to take that approach in which intellectual property was a part of the package. And I just remind us that the recommendation had these 6 areas that it covered. The bottom one, international cooperation, of course, is a wide framework for a treaty, and then you have identification, what was then understood as conservation and preservation, dissemination and protection. Of these, protection is the one that rather indirectly speaks to intellectual property legal approaches. And so this view that we have in the recommendation reflects a very holistic view and a rather interdisciplinary one, which is not strictly purely legal, but includes very much this anthropological understanding of culture. And I think if we look again at how the idea of safeguarding is expressed in the 2003 convention, we can see it reflects this approach of the recommendation, but obviously with it's a revised view with amendments and important additional ideas, where again, protection is seen as the place where the intellectual property comes in. So what I'm trying to say here is that intellectual property protection is very much viewed as one part of a much bigger package. And it's understood to be very, very valuable in some ways, but also very limited in others, which in a way is the message that Gustavo was bringing out too. Now, this just shows a lot of the history, which I don't want to go into. Just draw your attention to 2 or 3 points. More recently. Well, first of all, we have tried to have a treaty in that particular area, and it never took off, because trying to have a treaty specifically on intellectual property for this area of heritage is exceptionally difficult. And I think those colleagues from WIPO who now have these draft provisions for protection of traditional knowledge and cultural expressions, that is still draft provisions, they can share more of that experience with us. But it shows that this discussion has been going on for a long time. And I think that what I want to say here is that the 2003 convention possibly really offers an interesting opportunity for us to revisit this discussion and place it within that cultural context and see how intellectual property can be a force for good for the bearer communities, which is what it's about, of course. It's protecting their moral and economic rights in their heritage. I mean, intellectual property definitely has important potentials. First of all, it's based philosophically on the economic imperative to encourage creativity and innovation, and therefore, in that sense, it has an underlying philosophy that we can see could be very valuable to us. And we have seen also that many indigenous groups since the 1970s and even earlier have been pushing for a long time for intellectual property rules to be used to protect their interests in various symbols, forms, etc., that have been misappropriated and unfortunately distorted. Examples that I give here: Aboriginal art used, say, on T-shirts, and Native American headdresses used by teams of the NFL. And without doubt, geographical indicators or trademarks that prevent commercial exploitation by outsiders can play a very valuable role in protecting these. However, there are important problems that we have to address too. Now, this is a lot of information, and I don't want to go into too much detail. But first of all, one major problem is, of course, it's primarily an economic system, or a system that deals with monopolistic, primarily economic rights, although there are, of course, moral rights too. And the moral rights are the ones that perhaps can be seen to be very much in keeping with what we're interested in. But we don't view many of the products of ICH necessarily as some kind of commodity property. And therefore, a lot of it's going to fall outside intellectual property. Again, the notion of exclusive monopolistic rights is problematic when you're talking about an intergenerational transmission of knowledge, which is shared in a community. And that comes to the next point of the individualistic character too. Again, the need for fixation of ICH for it to enjoy copyright protection. It again can be problematic. When we look at patent protection, we have a requirement to show an innovative step, and that has very strict technical requirements associated with it, which means, for example, that knowledge about medicinal plants can be patented by, let's say, pharmaceutical companies that have laboratories where they can show a laboratory process that has this innovative step, but it's very, very hard if you're a community that over generations has discovered these properties of a plant. Again, the way that derivative works or transformation of works is treated as intellectual property isn't always in keeping with this very dynamic character of ICH elements, which are continually being reproduced and adapted, and therefore in some sense are derivative, many of them. And of course, the fixed duration of copyright is very problematic for a heritage based on intergenerational transmission. However, you know, that was the negatives, but definitely there have been successes. You know, the question of the properties of the neem tree, for example, its fungicidal properties, the Indian government has been able to challenge, for example, a European patent on that. On the other hand, 150 patents approximately have been taken out worldwide, and you know, how many have actually been successfully challenged is a question. And then we have the case of the Hoodia plant in the Kalahari Desert, used by indigenous peoples there as an appetite suppressant, which then was developed into a commercial drug, obviously with a patent. But again, pressure was brought, interestingly enough, by an NGO and an organization of the San people, which forced a benefit sharing agreement. And in a way, the intellectual property regime was part of that pressure. Although there are problems with that agreement, but the fact that it happened in itself is important. And we've seen, for example, several American football teams have been, or I should say North American, because it includes Canadian, have been forced to change their names and or their symbols because they've appropriated these from Native American peoples. And again, you know, the same has happened with regard to the fixations of traditional music and dance, for example. But there have been some definite gains, but I think the difficulty is so far it's pretty limited, and we have to think how it can become something less sporadic and really a system of protection that protects ICH elements. And of course, what Gustavo was showing us, that we're now in a whole new ballgame too, with the digitalization and even the metaverse, may I mention that? So, you know, they have an ability for this, but they also have limitations, particularly, you know, how can we really use them to protect what is perhaps the most important aspect of ICH, its significance and meaning for its bearers. And what we really are challenged with is, you know, how they really can work within the framework of the convention that we are working within ourselves. Without doubt they can, but more work has to be done on that. And so we need to develop our understanding and strategies for using it as this protection within Article 2.3. So it's sitting there in the convention. It hasn't really yet been exploited sufficiently. Article 3 is possibly problematic here because it says that nothing in the convention affects the rights and obligations of states parties relating to, among other things, intellectual property rights under international treaties. Which means, on the one hand, those intellectual property rights that actually may work against protecting ICH are still standing and effective. But it also means that there is we can read an invitation perhaps for states parties to look at how those rights and obligations can be brought within the framework of the 2003 Convention in an effective way. And as I mentioned, there are aspects of intellectual property rights in particular, which are perhaps particularly effective: trade secret protection and trademark protection, and also the geographical indicators, the appellations of origin, can all be used. But at the moment, it's a sort of scattered approach. It's not a comprehensive one. And it does require both quite a high degree of knowledge on the one hand, and second,
1 minute to go.
Okay, thank you, Bert. I'll finish in a minute, no problem. And also, it comes down to money. You know, taking cases is not cheap. So I listed some strategies. I won't go through them, and I'm sure these can be shared. So basically, I finish with this. Intellectual property is, on the one hand, a freestanding area of law. It's also, let us remember, Article 15.3 of 15.1 of the Economic, Social and Cultural Rights Covenant, Human Rights Covenant, also includes reference to intellectual property. So it's a human right too. And so if we follow that human rights approach of the convention and incorporate intellectual property rights through that in the spirit of the convention, then I really do think we can achieve something valuable by that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. You tied this perfectly to, I mean, the issue of intellectual property and the instruments that are available. And like what you said, there has to be a development of our understanding and strategies with these instruments and the 2003 convention, which we are working under. Okay, so I am going to introduce our next speaker. I hope I get the pronunciation right. Rune Fjellheim from the Sami Council in Norway. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure how many minutes I have, 8 or something like that. I guess. Thank you. What's that? I didn't hear you. Okay.
Bert, how much time do we have? Bert, you can just repeat that.
I'm saying that the presenter has 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
So the reason why I was invited here was probably because I had the responsibility of negotiating the agreement between the Sami people and the Walt Disney Animation Studios back in 2018-19. I was at that point Director General of the Sami Parliament of Norway, and the 3 Sami parliaments representing the people of the Sami people of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. We went together with the Sami Council, which is an NGO, and they went together to mandate me to negotiate this agreement. Let's start with the presentation then. Can you see this one?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. The Frozen film is quite famous, I guess, around the world. And we, in 2019, the world got to know about a public an agreement between the Sami people and Walt Disney Animation Studios on the making of this film. And the agreement, as it is presented here, I'll share the link with the agreement to all of you in the chat just later. But it was negotiated between the presidents of the Sami parliaments, Aili Keskitalu, Tiina Sanila-Aikio, Perolof Nutti, and the Sami Council President Åsa Larsson-Blind, together with Peter de Vecco, the producer of the film and the so-called filmmaker. It all went back to 2016, the first visit of the Disney team, Walt Disney Animation Studios team, when they came to the Sami areas for their research work. This is a picture of the group from a regular tourist visit to the Sami Parliament of Norway. It all triggered our curiosity to why they were here, but we understood that they were probably making a sequel to the massive success Frozen, because that has had elements and was taken from the Nordic areas, and you already in the first Frozen film had elements of Sami culture in it. This then triggered a letter from the Sami Parliament presidents and the Sami Council president to Disney. And this letter sort of sets the stage for the later negotiations that took place. In this letter, the Sami Parliament presidents and the Sami Council president makes it perfectly clear that what we want to ensure is that there is a proper treatment of Sami indigenous property in this movie that you are going to make. We don't know what you are going to make, but we expect it to be that Sami elements are going to be used. And the presidents also required a recognition of the property rights of our people to our cultural elements. And that we have to coordinate this for the proper use of these elements. So, long story short, Disney replied in the spring of 2018, and they accepted the request for a new meeting, with the Sami Parliament representatives and the negotiating team that I was leading. And the second visit was then in October 2018. So here we are having a meal with the producer, Peter Del Vecchio, and part of the negotiating team. By setting the stage that we regard this as our property and we want to discuss the conditions on the use accordingly, we enter into constructive dialogue with Disney on that. We didn't have too much discussion on whether it is our property or not. I think both parties recognized that we had a solid mandate from the representative bodies in the Sami parliaments and the Sami Council to represent the Sami interests in this. So we entered into this negotiation with that point of departure. And the solution that finally was negotiated in was a solution that that I've been thinking of afterwards has been quite a good one. I mean, the lawyers in the room would probably have various views on this, but we got in the agreement a preamble that said that we are, where we express our property rights to the Sami cultural property elements, and that we require free, prior and informed consent for the use of that, and adequate benefit sharing is employed. The filmmakers of Frozen 2, Walt Disney Animation Studios, respect our concerns without expressing a view as to the above position. I think this is sort of a door opener in the sense that we didn't have to go into the discussion whether it is our property or not. But the understanding on the other side was that they understood that our reactions to the potential use of our elements would be aligned with the misuse of property otherwise. So they understood our point of departure. And that eased the negotiations and eased the dialogue a lot, because I mean, these companies are used to negotiate with property owners. I mean, they probably had a solid agreement with Porsche before using the 911 car in the Cars movie. Otherwise, I don't think they would have used it. But when we brought our people in, we went from the designs on the left here to the design on the right, where we brought the elements actually closer to the Sami elements of the dress, because we found it more natural. And one important element of that was that, of course, if we were to share our cultural elements, and where we took some older designs of our elements into the movie and accepted that. We couldn't run the risk that we accepted using someone else's elements. So that's why we brought it actually closer to the Sami designs otherwise. So we went from this and this to this. And this is also for the older woman in the movie. And as was mentioned earlier, of course, these are all now part of the commercial business of the Disney concern, the Disney company. But we have entered into a longer-term relationship, so we have a constant dialogue on how this has gone, and we have also a learning element in the agreement. So, what are the lessons learned in short? Well, our point of departure was that this is our property. At least others need to recognize that that is our position. They don't necessarily have to recognize whether it's our property or not, but it fosters the understanding of what the dialogue is about when that is clear. The third thing is that we as a people have the right to also make the rules for the use of our property. That's our point of departure. And one huge lesson in that regard is that we have a lot to do on our home turf. One of the biggest challenges, of course, of managing such a property is that we agree among ourselves. And that is the biggest discussion. It's not so much how we regard the use or misuse of others, but how we agree on how it should be among ourselves. That's where the challenge is. So I'll leave it with that. I hope it was not too much over time, and I leave a copy of the agreement and the documents that are public in the chat for you all to see.
You're perfectly fine with the time.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for the timing and for just showing such a fascinating example of like a successful example when these things do arise, and just showing how delicate these negotiations are when they do happen. So yes, thank you very much. Okay, now we're up to our last speaker for this session, who is very apt actually to be with us. So I'd like to introduce Leticia Caminero from WIPO, the Traditional Knowledge Division. So thank you for being with us, Leticia. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to share the panel with so many interesting colleagues. So today we'll talk about intellectual property and traditional cultural expressions. And I'm going to try to make it as fast as I can. So we're going to first talk about TCEs as intellectual property. Then we want to talk about what WIPO is doing. And finally, I'm going to give you some tools and resources where you can learn more about our work in this area. So on that, traditional cultural expressions as intellectual property, we have elements that are intrinsic to TCE. So it's a manifestation and of the culture in itself. It can be tangible or intangible, it's in constant development, it's part of the identity or the patrimony of a traditional community or indigenous people, and it has a generational origin, and it's usually hard to point who is the actual author or where exactly it came from. It can be manifest in so many different ways: music, art, design, dance, interpretation, ceremonies, craft, and narration. So it's very broad all the ways, all the matters in which it could be expressed or it can be manifest. There's some group of people who understand that traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions are part of the public domain, which is, there's no clear definition what the public domain is, and most legal frameworks, they don't have a legal definition, or they don't have a normative framework for public domain. It is understood as anything that is outside intellectual property protection, and it is for that free to use and to exploit by any person. So that is what if the train thought of some people regarding this issue regarding TKs and TCEs. With that, let's walk through how intellectual property can be useful for TCEs. So these are some of the concepts we're working with at WIPO. They're not there's no consensus on their definition, but these are the ones that we use to work with. So first, there's misuse. So TCEs can be sort of misuse, which is improper excessive use. The acts that can change the nature of a TCE. They're also at risk of misappropriation, which is when you take without authorization, or you take the property or someone without authorization in a fraudulent way. Then we also have some positive side, which is the economic potential for the communities, for the industry, and for the commerce that TCEs can have. And finally, of course, TCEs are in constant risk of erosion, which may mean that the community where it comes from, it's the generational knowledge is lost, or the tradition is lost, or the expression is lost for the passing of time, or for the degradation of the community where it comes from. So there are risk of erosion for different factors. With that, let's think about if TCEs can be considered as IP. So intellectual property, it protects everything that is production of an intellectual product. So everything that is an intellectual product can be protected under intellectual property law. But of course, there are certain rules and certain requirements that you need to meet according to each type of intellectual property. But in general, that is the idea, or that is the idea behind intellectual property protection. One of the issues is, as one of the panelists mentioned before, is that intellectual property was conceived with the idea that of innovation, originality, and something new and something original, something that hasn't been done before, or hasn't been done in that specific way, or hasn't been expressed in that specific way. So with that logic behind intellectual property, we often find that traditional cultural expressions are not fully protected under the current traditional IP regime. For that, there are two options, so either adaptation or a special framework. In adaptation, we find that you can take conventional intellectual property and change it into change it in a way that it can protect TCEs and it can adapt to TCEs. And also there's another possibility in which you create a sui generis system. So a system thought and created and made for traditional cultural expressions. With that, the protection on the IP could be either a positive protection or a defensive protection. The positive is when you use proactively intellectual property rights to assert a right to assert the property over traditional cultural expressions. And the defensive protections is when you use the system to prevent someone else from either using it or appropriating it or acquiring IP rights over certain traditional cultural expressions. And now I'm going to move to some sample of how it has been, what has been happening in different parts of the world. So in New Zealand, regarding specifically trademark, there is thanks to the Trademark Act of 2002, there is a prohibition, or the act prevents that the registration of trademark that include a significant section of the community or could likely offend a significant section of the community, including the Maori people, which are the indigenous people from New Zealand. So in this example, we see how a defensive approach was taken in order to prevent registration that can be regarded as offensive. And also in the Andean community, which is formed by Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, we find that there's a decision in which it is not allowed to register expression of indigenous, Afro-American, or local community culture or cultures or practices. So in these two examples, we see how a defensive approach was taken in order to prevent third parties, third people to acquire trademark rights, in this case, over expressions, traditional cultural expressions, or over expression of words that can be found offensive to a specific community. Then we have another example of a certification mark, in which, in this case, the Cowichan tribe, they registered a certification mark in 1996. With this, they distinguish that clothing elements, that is scarves, slippers, mittens, hats, and so on, they certified, the one that holds this mark, that they are authorized and they have made in accordance with their traditional tribal methods for manufacturing this item. So this certification marks, it's a stamp of approval from these indigenous people. So in this case, they're using the existing intellectual property system in a proactive way. They're using it in a way that is that they are acquiring rights, and they are using it in a way proactively to secure their protection. And then from there they can authorize who can who is certified and who is not certified. Another example is a GI. This is currently on the way. Is being processed right now, and is still we can work on, but it's a good example that I think is important to talk about. In this case, this is from Senegal, and they have gathered different stakeholders and created an association. And this association has the purpose to promote mad, which is a forest fruit from a specific area. And with that, they're looking for to protect hazard classification, and they're looking to help to the contribution of the income of the rural population, because this the harvest of the mud, it's very significant for this region in particular. So this is another example how to proactively use the IP system. Then finally, we have a copyright example in which the copyright law, in this case, the Copyright Act of 2005 from Ghana, was changed to introduce a protection to expressions belonging to cultural heritage from heritage of Ghana. So in this case, the kente cloth is protected against reproduction, communication to the public, adaptation, translation, and other transformation, all the typical copyrights, exclusive rights. This TCEs holds this protection, but thanks to an adaptation of the conventional copyright system to allow a TCE protection of this kind, and with that, it falls in the kente cloth has found protection in this new and adapted copyright system. So some of the questions when they arise when it's developing or is thinking about creating a sui generis system and a specific system for protection. So who's going to be the benefit? What acts are going to be prohibited? Why protect? What is the objective? What should be protected? Are there going to be formalities like for the industrial property, for trademarks that you need to register in order to have exclusivity or not, or it can be copyrighted, but the moment the moment the expression is created, the original expression is created, then it is protected and it doesn't need a registration to acknowledge its protection. So all these questions are the ones that need to be addressed when thinking about creating or making a new special system for traditional cultural expression protection. Now let's move to the work that we're doing here at WIPO. So the committee was already mentioned when I'm one of the panelists, but the mandate of the committee is to carry out text-based negotiations in order to finalize an agreement or more than one agreement on traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, and genetic resources. So here I leave you with the, I give you here with the current current mandate is going to start next year, and also the link for the draft articles. And on the draft articles, these are the current negotiation papers are being discussed in the forum. And the draft articles, this is like a summary of what it contains as of now. The glossary, the protection criteria, the beneficiaries, the scope, terms of protection, sanction, and remedies. So all of this, it's been constantly negotiated and discovered as of now in the draft articles. And specifically, this is the draft. These are the three alternatives to the draft objective, in which they are closely they're closely in text, but they have also different approaches. So one of them talks about adequate protection relating to intellectual property. Another one talks about a protection within the intellectual property system. And the third one is more specific in the matter of the objective, what it's looking to protect through this treaty. So this is just an example of how most of the draft articles look like, and what is current, the different approaches that the negotiations are forming. Right now, we just finishing our mandate 2020-2021. We will start the new mandate 22-2023. And moving to what we do at the division, at the traditional knowledge division, I just wanted to point out some specific things that we do apart from working in the facilitation of international negotiation of the committee. We also do some specific initiatives and programs regarding indigenous people and local communities. And with that, we are in the middle of this program, which is a program aimed to training, mentoring, and matchmaking for women entrepreneurs from indigenous peoples and local communities. And we have a representative from a quite balanced, regional balance, and they all have different projects. They all have different businesses or different initiatives, or different approaches, business approaches, in which we are helping them to develop not only on the IP side, but also on the business side. And right now, we are also working on this great project in which we are.
We have to wrap up in about a minute, okay?
Okay, no problems. I'm almost finishing. So this is the photography prize, in which we are looking to showcase the creativity and the talent of indigenous people and local community. And the deadline, it's going to be next month, on January 22. So I leave you here with the details in case you know someone or you are interested in this photography prize. Finally, we have these resources in which you can read more about our work on this area and related areas. And also, if you want to know about all the webinars and all the activities we do, I do encourage you to sign up for our email updates. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Extremely interesting and useful. And I'm sure everyone enjoyed that. There were a lot of comments. I'm going to hand over to Bert.
Yeah, we have about 20 or 30 minutes question and answer session. I know people have questions. Then feel free to raise your hand. See at the bottom of your screen, reaction, you can raise your hand if you have a question. Rem, do you have anything to add?
See, there's a question there, Claude.
Oh, Claude. Okay. You have the floor.
You're on mute, Claude. We can't hear you.
Claude, your microphone. Claude, what micro est fermé? Ah.
Bonjour, excusez-moi. Je suis très intéressée, bien sûr, par tout ce qui a été dit, parce qu'à Madagascar, on n'a rien fait. Et je pense notamment au film de Disney Madagascar. Et je voudrais savoir si ça peut être rétroactif. Est-ce qu'on peut réagir maintenant? Parce que je suppose que rien n'a été fait pour nous. Est-ce qu'il est possible de faire des démarches après coup, après des années, à la sortie du film?
Même Janet, Jorge, Laetitia. You want an English version? Or
yeah, it depends. I'm gonna talk as my general knowledge as a lawyer. It depends on the laws of your country. And if the time limit to present a legal action has not expired. Usually in legal system, there are different periods of time in which you are allowed to bring a legal action. They differ according to the illegality and according to the laws. So I encourage you to look for counseling on that area, and they can guide you better according to the national laws.
Ma'am Janet, you want to add something?
Merci.
No, nothing to add to that. It's perfect. Perfect response there. Laetitia, thank you.
Gustavo, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Beth. I wanted to thank all the speakers in this roundtable, especially Laetitia on short notice, as well as Rune. Thank you.
You're on mute, Gustavo.
Gustavo, unmute your.
I'm sorry. Nobody hear me. So I wanted to thank Laetitia Caminero as well as Rune for sharing their knowledge in this table, and also wanted to invite everybody to look further into the WIPO. The effort of this steering committee was to share this important topic and put it out. And of course, we have a very luxurious member, which is Janet, the lawyer. She's also giving us all this background, and all the information will be available in the website. I'm asking Laetitia if you can share us your presentation for the website of the steering committee of the ICH NGO forum, sorry, and it will be available for all the members. And please join the effort of WIPO. I think what they're doing with the women and empowerment is very important. Please join that. And also they have the photography contest, which is very interesting. I just wanted to mention that Rune, I'm going to make you a question. There is this merchandising that's $5.4 billion in revenue just for 2018. I think it's bigger even for Frozen, for the first film. Has there been any kind of revenue share for the Sami people? In that case, I will just point out that in the case of Mexico, no kind of revenue was ever acknowledged to the bearers of intangible cultural heritage, but wanted to know what's your take on that with the Finnish people. Thank you very much.
Well, as you can see from the non-confidential ceremonial agreement, there is a package of benefit sharing, and when we negotiated, we had a list of elements that was important to us. Not at least we wanted it to be in our own language and in our own, and it would be a part of our children's sort of media daily life, and that was part of the benefit that we negotiated with the Walt Disney Animation Studios. So yes, there are a lot of money, but I think the counterpart, if the ones you are talking with meet someone that is only after the money, I don't think a commercial partner would actually take the kind of approach that was taken here. So I cannot comment on potential elements that are not in the public agreement, but I mean, those were very important elements for us, that we get it in our language also, that it's dubbed and it's released at the same time as the cinema version, so that our children don't get to see it in their own language 3 months after they have seen it in the majority language of the country. I mean, that is very important to us. So it was released on the same day. When we managed that with our, and Disney actually facilitated and paid for that. So those kind of things, and also training elements. We are now secured spots for Sami creatives that are able to go for internship with Disney, Walt Disney Animation Studios. So those are the kind of elements that we wanted in.
Yorine, you had your hand raised. Rem?
I was applauding.
Oh, okay. Any more questions?
I thought that as well, yeah.
We'll be reminding that we're running over the due time. But can we take one more question?
It doesn't look like anyone has a question, so maybe we can.
Can we thank all the presenters and all the audience?
Janet, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. In fact, I just wanted, first of all, to thank Leticia very much for being present here today. It's exceptionally important because, as you saw from my slide, we've had a rather interesting on-off relationship, you know, in this matter between UNESCO and WIPO. And I think this is a moment where your work is going in such very interesting directions that for us, it's really vital that we keep the dialogue so that we don't just go off in two completely separate directions. But in fact, that what you are doing in WIPO, which, as I say, is really interesting, potentially very, very valuable to us, is as much as possible aligned with what we also are doing, so that the governments involved in both cases feel a strong political, moral, as well as legal pressure to respect these rights. So it's really a kind of statement from the heart, that one.
Okay, may I invite you to join a self-publication project over this presentation?
Are you talking to me there, Bert?
I'm talking to all you, Gustavo, and all the team. Please, the presenter, please. It's
okay, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Between us, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Thank you, Janet, for the kind words, and thank you, everyone.
thank you to all the speakers. It was
thank
honestly
you,
a very interesting session. And I can see from the comments that most of the attendees thought that as well. Okay, so if we're done with this session, I would just like to give the floor to Laurier. I think he has just a few things to point out for us before we finish for the day.
Thank you all. Just a few housekeeping issues. First and foremost, I'd like to let you know that for the elections, I'd like to invite you to participate in the elections of the new members of the steering committee. You can register online. The registration form is online, and a newsletter has been sent to everyone. Now you have to register and give an email address for your NGO. You only have one vote per NGO. Okay, so if you have more than one person voting for an NGO, then the vote will be canceled. So please register you have to first of all register. Registration is open right now, and it will be open until tomorrow evening. And then Tuesday, you'll be able to vote. You have Tuesday and until Wednesday noon to vote. Okay, so actually we're doing it online, so it has to be done in two operations, so to speak. You first of all have to register your NGO and give an email address. And then once we have that, then you'll be able to vote beginning on Tuesday morning. And polling will be open Tuesday and Wednesday until noon. Okay, so please take advantage of this democratic process and go vote. All of the applications are on the website. Gabrielle and Sean have sent a newsletter to all of us so that we can register first and then vote. So thank you so much, Gabrielle and Chanois, you have been fantastic. I mean, you've done this in record time, and so we're very, very grateful to both of you for doing this. And then, of course, check the program. I don't want to sort of go through the program for you. I especially wanted to mention the elections. Well, the candidates will be presenting speeches tomorrow evening from 5:30 to 7:30. This will be Paris time. Okay. So those will be presented. You can check the Zoom link. It's not the same Zoom link as this one because it is the NGO Forum Zoom link, but they will be presenting online beginning at 5:30, and you will be able to ask them questions in the same way that we're able to interact with the speakers today. Okay, so and then the working group will be meeting. There will be a meeting of the working group at noon, Monday at noon. Matti will be meeting with his group on the underrepresented regions. And there will be Heritage Alive will be meeting on Tuesday from 1:15 to 2:15. And then Wednesday evening, Wednesday at noon again, Heritage Alive will be launching the special issue, the last issue of the journal that will be launched on Wednesday, 1:30 online as well, and it's on traditional musical instruments. The general meeting will be on Wednesday, beginning at 5:30 to 8:30 in the afternoon online, but you will be using the UNESCO link, okay? So because we'll get technical support from UNESCO and also translation from English to French and from French to English. So please use the UNESCO line for the general meeting on Wednesday. Thursday, there a working group meeting. Ananya will be meeting with her group. I think it's Wednesday. Just wait. Thursday. Yes, Thursday, 1:15 to 2:15, and then there's the working group meeting on Friday. The research group will be meeting on Friday, and Martin will be leading that research group meeting. That's on Friday, 1:15 again to 2:15. Okay, by using the forum website link. So I think that about wraps it up. Are there any other is there any other information we have to provide to the members, dear members of the steering committee?
No, it seems all good. Did we mention the working group for underrepresented regions, which is tomorrow, the 13th?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
And I see Matty is there. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you all so much. Thanks for coming. And I'd like to thank the technical support.
Well, thank you very much to the
UNESCO
interpreters.
and the interpreters for their very fine work.
We can't hear you, Laurier.
Oh, okay.
Now we can.
Okay, sorry. Yes, just a word of thanks to the technical support team from UNESCO and also the interpreters. I found the interpretation and translation was really excellent. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And thanks also for all those who came. We had a very good turnout, 78 people. So it's a good, we're very happy.
Thank you to all. See you soon.
Thank you.
Sorry we didn't meet in person.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, or see you tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow.